All right, greetings and thank you for joining us at FutureMoneyTrends.com. I have a great guest for you today, Dave Scotese. He is an expert in Bitcoin transactions, and we know this because we've actually, as a business with Future Money Trends, we have done some transactions with Dave, and you can find his writing at litmocracy.blogspot.com. We'll definitely have that post up for you. And also his some of his writings in the comment section of voluntarist.com is also present. We want to get him on the phone today to talk about Bitcoin, gold, silver, freedom, and even the election for 2016. Dave, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, Dave, let's start off with, I was going to start off with a Bitcoin, but let's actually start off with freedom and the election of 2016. Just going by this website that you introduced me to right now, Voluntarist, do you self-identify as a peaceful, as if there's any other kind, a peaceful anarchist, or are you more libertarian?
I would guess between those two, I'd have to say I'm a peaceful anarchist. Yeah. Because libertarian too often is the big L libertarian, which is the name of a political party, and I am completely apolitical.
Yeah, no, I feel you. The big news, of course, in the 2016 election is you've got the oligarchs candidate Hillary Clinton possibly limping to the election, and then you've got Trump, who some people think he's just another part of the oligarchy, but I kind of think he's there to actually. His intentions are good, but he's certainly no anarchist. He's absolutely a statist. When it comes to people who ask you about, well, why don't you participate in the political process, what's your response? Because I get that question all the time. People go, why don't you vote? They think that I have to vote because somebody died for me to vote. But in my opinion, I don't think anybody's died for me to vote for a long time. Not at least the wars that the U.S. has been engaged in.
Right. What it comes down to is, do I want to tell everybody who I think should be their conscience? And no, I mean, yeah, I do. I want to tell everybody who I think should be their conscience, but that option is not on the ballot. There's no entry that says yourself. You know, for everybody's ruler should be himself. That's my peaceful anarchy. Everybody has a conscience. Can we just rely on them to use their conscience? And if you come upon somebody that's not using his conscience, then they're going to try to hurt you or whatever. You learn self-defense and you protect yourself from them. And if everybody did that, then politics would not be, nobody would be interested in it, because nobody wants to be ruled. I mean, some people want to follow leaders, and that's fine. They can go follow their leaders. They don't have to vote. You just find somebody that you're going to follow and you follow them. But the idea of voting, it lends support to the idea that we can use violence to do good, and we can't. We can make it look that way, which is what politicians, that's their business. Their business is to make it look like we can use violence to do good. They don't want to put it that way. They just say, oh, everybody has to pay taxes and everybody has to follow these laws that we make up. But no, I don't vote because I don't think we should be doing that at all.
When it comes to the implosion, essentially, of the current state, the current oligarchs have made an absolute mess of the United States, of civilization itself. When you look at like things like the voters in BREXIT or what's going on here in the U.S. with Donald Trump, do you think that there is? I kind of get the sense just from talking to people, and I'm kind of living in a bubble because of Future Money Trends. I talk to a lot of people who do think outside of the box. But I feel like there is an awakening going on. Like I was reading some of the blogs and articles on 9/11, a lot of alternative ideas on what happened that day. But it was like from people who I would have never expected to post stuff like that. Do you think there is an awakening? And whether Trump is the guy or Brexit was the vote, but this is a result of an awakening that the state is the problem, that the current monetary system is the problem.
Yeah, I think a lot of the rate at which somebody who didn't recognize that using violence doesn't do good they come to that realization and they see that, well, that's what politics and government, that's what that's all there for, is because those people want to use violence, and so they make it look like they can do good that way. And yes, I think the rate at which new people are figuring that out is increasing. But there's something that you said early in that question about they're completely screwed up the United States. I think what they're screwing up is their own system. And I'm kind of outside of their system because I buy and sell Bitcoin from people who need to sell or buy it, and I make most of my money that way. And then I get on the internet and I help people take care of their websites, and I make money that way too. And then how do I get the money? Well, people need Bitcoin, and so I can get cash, the U.S. dollars that the grocery store takes. I get that mostly through dealing Bitcoin. But yeah, their monetary system, they're screwing that up because they keep printing more of it, whether they print paper versions or digital versions. And then they use violence, and the central bankers are the root cause of all the wars. But there's a video on YouTube that says all wars are banker wars or something like that. So that's a good explanation of that.
You think Bitcoin itself is eventually going to go mainstream?
I don't know about mainstream. Let's see. Did computer programming go mainstream? Yeah, I guess it did. I need a better example. I can't think of one. Maybe later in the interview I'll come up with a good example. But Bitcoin, I think it'll pick up speed and it'll stick around for several decades or centuries. As far as going mainstream, like cell phones went mainstream, right? I mean, people in Africa have cell phones, even though they don't have like indoor plumbing. People without indoor plumbing still get cell phones. So indoor plumbing, did that go mainstream? Well, there's, gypsies and hunter-gatherer communities that are alive and kicking today, and they don't have indoor plumbing.
Sure.
They don't even have, so in that sense, I think Bitcoin will stick around. I don't know if you'd call it going mainstream, because I think it'll always be a relatively small set of people, relative to the population of the whole planet. So first world economies didn't really go mainstream because they're still the second and third world. So
sure. Now, do you see, as far as Bitcoin, if somebody takes ownership of Bitcoin, becomes somebody who uses it as a currency, do you think Bitcoin could potentially be the pioneer of something else that later on becomes the free market digital currency, or at least a currency not controlled by a government? I mean, I've even seen talk of like JP Morgan DigiCash. I don't know how true that is or not, but they have a patent for it. I've seen different things like a current digital currency from Amazon, of course. The Chuck E. Cheese has their own currency, and the U.S. dollar, digital currency, I guess, is not that groundbreaking when you consider the U.S. dollar is a digital currency. So, I guess is where do you think Bitcoin's role in as an alternative currency to what we have right now is? Do you think it's going to be that alternative currency, or do you think it's perhaps leading the way to and paving the way for something else?
Yeah, that's a tough call. Bitcoin, most people use words the way that they learned them from everybody else, and it's sloppy and it's messy, and you can use a word however you want, like cool or sick. Those two words can mean the same thing. Mm-hmm. There's lots of different ways, and that's how most people learn and use words. But Bitcoin is a word that one person or small group of people made up, and then they gave it a definition and they put some software behind it, and it now has a meaning, which is you can't just use it however you want. I mean, you can, but everybody's going to misunderstand you, because it means a specific thing, rendered in computer code, and that specific thing, it'll change over time because consensus drives change in Bitcoin. And some people would argue, well, if there's a change, that does the thing that's called a hard fork, then that's not going to be Bitcoin anymore. That's something new. And for those people, the answer to your question is it's probably just a precursor. There's going to be hard forks, and the new hard fork to a lot of people, that's still going to be Bitcoin. And then there is another possibility that something new comes up which isn't Bitcoin at all, and nobody's going to claim it is, but it will overtake because it's a better rendering of the decentralized digital monetary system based on widely available data, basically the public database, the blockchain.
Bitcoin largely has been out of the mainstream press since I want to say, it's been like what 2013 that it had its big runs in to 1200.
I think so. End of 2013.
Yeah, so I mean, there's some news on the financial front, but overall, it's been pretty quiet on the mainstream press unless you're specifically out there following it. My question is, what is the current state of being able to spend your digital currency? How many businesses now are available to you? How easy is it? Is it easier to spend it? Because I remember 3 or 4 years ago, it wasn't that easy to spend it. It wasn't that easy to even get it. It was kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is easier to spend it. I mean, there's lots of people who are taking advantage of the fact that every business wants cash. And if you go to that business and you say, well, I'll pre-buy a bunch of stuff from you in the form of gift cards, the business gets the cash, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to have to pay for that cash by providing services, but they're in the business of doing that, so they don't care if they have to provide those services now or later. They're basically borrowing that cash from whoever buys those gift cards for the markdown that those gift cards allow. So a lot of companies are saying, well, we'll buy your gift cards for a certain % off, and then we'll sell them to other people for Bitcoin. And the reason the Bitcoin opens up that opportunity is because it's irreversible. So when they sell the gift card, so I'm a company, I'm actually not, but I'm pretending. Let's pretend I'm a company and I sell these gift cards. So I buy them for a heavy discount from businesses that want cash. And then I sell them to consumers that like those businesses already and are willing to basically lend their money to that business for this discount. And then, and it goes around, and I take a little piece off of that deal. And businesses like that have been popping up for 2 or 3 years. And so if you just look online, you could find one, and that makes it pretty easy to spend Bitcoin. And then there's people like me who are buying whenever you want to sell, but you sell for a little bit less than what the market would offer you, or you if you want to buy Bitcoin, then you find somebody and you pay a little bit more than the market. Or you can go through the exchanges, and that hooks you back into the banking system and all that rot. So, but it's growing, and people are solving problems, and that's not ever going to stop. So yeah, it's easier now, and it's going to continue getting easier.
Are there any big catalysts coming up for Bitcoin or any of the digital currencies that you think will help advance them or give them that leap forward?
Not that I can think of.
Do you think it's growing specifically? Does it help? Like, I know gold stocks and gold specifically, when things aren't going well, like in the global economy, it might be better for gold. Is there a correlation there for Bitcoin? I mean, is Bitcoin kind of on the back burner because the U.S. dollar has been strong relative to other fiat currencies and even physical precious metals for the last 5 years? Is that affect Bitcoin?
Yeah, I'm sure that has some effect. There was a lot of speculation when the government of Cyprus, I think the island in the Mediterranean, decided that they needed to take a bunch of money from the depositors to their banks because they were failing and they needed to shore it up. So basically they just, it's just like a small bump in hyperinflation. Everybody's spending power went down. They didn't actually increase the money supply. They just stole the money directly, but it amounts to the same thing. And as that happens, And that seems to be happening more at the pace at which the people trying to control the money system are exploiting it to the point that the public is catching on. That pace is increasing, and that, I guess, would count as a bump for, an accelerator for Bitcoin and gold and silver. Anything that you can basically protect from the system is gonna.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, the silver and gold people, they either hate Bitcoin or they love Bitcoin. What's your opinion on gold and silver?
I actually keep 1/3 of my savings in each of those three things: Bitcoin and gold and silver, because they maintain their value. Their purchasing power goes up in environments where enough people are fooled into putting their faith in fiat currency, and the United States is such a place now. So my purchasing power is increasing because I keep my savings in those three things, and I don't think that trend is going to end.
Now, when you say your purchasing power has increased over the last 5 years, that's not been the case, correct? Let's see, gold in the last 5 years, what did it do? Yeah, I guess it went up to 2,000, but what was it 5 years ago? It was at 1,900 5 years ago. Today it's at about 1,300.
Okay, yeah, so there my purchasing power went down over 5 years, but let's look at 20 years.
Sure.
And what was gold at 20 years, or 200? So it goes both ways, but generally up, and that's been true for Bitcoin since the beginning. Well, I guess it's true for all three of those things since the beginning, because gold started at 25, right?
Yeah. Now, do you use anything to compound to help those savings vehicles, or are they simply for preservation? Because obviously Bitcoin and gold do not pay a yield.
Well, it's my active trading, because if the price of one of those things goes up a lot, I want to keep the value measured in dollars, because that's what everybody else uses as a numeraire. So I figured I would too. Not so much consciously, but just because it's easier. Mm-hmm. It's easier because that's the way I was conditioned. So I keep the value of those three things about even. So if the price of one goes up, I have to sell it, and then I buy a little bit of whichever one I have the least value of. And so in that sense, it compounds.
Sure. Are there any Bitcoin publicly traded companies that people have access to that are, not just speculative, things? I know there are a few out there that people have just slapped the name Bitcoin or digital currency. But, are there any legitimate businesses out there that people can actually buy on the public markets?
I don't pay a lot of attention to that market, just because the public markets is a pretty dangerous place. But I think there's one called GBTC, and I don't know what those initials stand for. Global Bitcoin or something maybe like that. And then I think the Winklevoss twins are working on setting up an ETF that's basically a Bitcoin investment. And then a friend of mine told me about another one called Bitcoin Shop, which I think they got into mining, and their share price went from $4 down to 2 cents after they decided to get in there. So they're, churning and trying to start a fire for their little publicly traded stock, I guess.
Sure. Now, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about Bitcoin, and they even want to go and take the next step and hold some of their savings in it, what are the best places to go? What's the easiest steps to follow?
I recommend going to localbitcoins.com and putting up an ad that says you can buy Bitcoin, and put aside some cash and say, I put an ad up that I can buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. And if you study the market, so if you do a search on Google for Bitcoin, then you'll find some exchanges where everybody's going to buy and sell Bitcoin, or there's a website called Preev, Preev.com. They have a Bitcoin price on there. So you see what the Bitcoin price is at currently, according to any one of those places. They're all going to be slightly different, but it gives you a general idea. So right now the general idea is like $605 for a Bitcoin. So you put an ad up on local Bitcoins that says, yeah, I have $100, I want to buy some Bitcoin, and I'll pay $100 for, do some math to figure out how much Bitcoin that is. You put the ad up, and then you wait and you see what happens. And if nobody answers you, then you got to figure, either nobody around here wants to sell $100 worth of Bitcoin. Do I have to buy more? Maybe if I offer a better price, and you start playing around with it. And at some point, you're going to start getting people contacting you and saying, hey, I want to trade with you. And then from there, you'll discover that as you make yourself available to trade more and more, you will be able to get better and better prices. And eventually you'll have a reputation. This is exactly what I did. And it ended up making me more money than I was making as a software engineer. So that's where I am now.
Well, that's an incredible story. And certainly if anybody wants to purchase Bitcoin to learn more, I strongly suggest you read and follow and look for other interviews with Dave Scotese, litmocracy.blogspot.com. And again, we'll have any other links that he mentioned, as well as the local Bitcoin blog. Dave, thank you so much for your time. Hope to talk to you more about this topic. Bitcoin is certainly probably the most exciting currency available to any investor right now.
Yeah, I like meeting people. New people come into Bitcoin, and maybe I should put this in my ad. They're lucky if they get me, because when you meet somebody, you ask them questions. Some traders are like, well, I'm not really interested in sitting here and chatting with you. Can we get done with the trade and take off? But me, I love that stuff. I love questions. So people contact me and they ask me questions, and we just, we chat for an hour about all kinds of stuff, and it's great. So that's another great benefit of getting into Bitcoin, is you'll meet people who know stuff and who have different ways of looking at things. And it's very highly recommended.
Dave Scotese, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoy it.